Welcome, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your producer and host of the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. This is your motivational podcast of people's incredible journeys. Oh, yeah, let's do this. Welcome back, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I would love to welcome Mike Calvo as the CEO and founder of the Blind Visionary. Mike Calvo, I needed to say that. Sorry, laugh because for those that are tuning in for the first time, Mike doesn't have any hair and his last name is Calvo. Calvo means bald in Spanish, so it's like a dual meaning, and we kind of chuckled before this, so that's why I'm chuckling. But anyways, Mike Calvo.
Prophecy.
Yeah, exactly. Draws on his journey from overcoming blindness to lead and inspire. His passion for technology and accessibility drives him to empower others through engaging talks that blend humor, heartfelt messages, and practical insights. He challenges societal perceptions, promotes inclusivity, and motivates audiences to embrace resilience and innovation. Absolutely love this, and I love our alignment. So nice to meet you, Mike. Welcome to A Little Less Fear podcast.
Awesome. I want to meet that
guy. Oh my goodness, Mike is all the way in Florida.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and in the hot summer of Orlando.
Holy cow. I've been there, and I can honestly say it was pretty darn hot. I remember walking through Miami Calle Ocho 2 years ago, and it was so hot I couldn't even speak. I was just walking the streets in silence. I was like, I can't even talk, it's so hot. Because if I talk, it's going to generate more heat, and I'm going to get dehydrated, and I'll be so exhausted. So yeah, I remember that heat.
Yeah, man. And a Calle Ocho in the middle of the day. But that's when you need a guarapo or something. You know, you get yourself a sugarcane juice or something tasty from the locals,
that sounds delicious. Wow, that sounds great. That sounds
good
nice.
Stuff.
Well, Mike, hey, you have quite an incredible journey. I'd like to know your story, and I'm sure our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners, I want to know how you overcame blindness to lead and inspire. What motivated you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I've always found that statement to be interesting, right? Overcame.
Sure. I know, right? Yeah. What does that mean?
Well, and it's like I have been, in what I do some training, right? And one of the things that my trainer told me one day was, "Hey, Calvo, don't answer when somebody asks you a question. So that's a great question, because what you're saying is, give me a second, I'm thinking about it. So just say, give me a second, I'm thinking about it, instead of, that's a great question." And I think that that statement, overcoming, is the same thing. You know, we deal with the hand we're dealt, dude. I mean, everybody has some sort of a disability. I don't care what it is. If it's if you can see it, fine. If you can't, but other people, and even with me, like as a blind guy, until recently, until I found the most amazing knife ever, I couldn't cut a steak right because I couldn't.
I can't even imagine.
Well, right. Because I couldn't line up the you have to cut with the grain or whatever. And, right. But I mean, so there's little things, and it's funny because I've met people that have, different disabilities, and I don't know. Overcoming is one of those things that I think every human being that lives, more than a few years on this earth, even from the beginning, we're overcoming. We're really trying to overcome. We're trying to meet up to our own personal and societal expectations. And yeah, I just find that to be a very interesting term. But
I love how you said that people are kind of just meeting up to like societal's expectations, like kind of just almost just like meeting it, realizing it, facing it, and then going forth from there.
Well, societal expectations, I mean, they're based on so many things. Growing up in the Cuban community in Miami, I dealt with a lot of ignorance. And one of the things I had to learn to do in my life was to literally separate the ignorance from the stupid. And there's a difference.
How do you, tell us, how do you do
that? Because ignorance just really means you don't know. So why are you going to get pissed off at somebody if they say, well, how do you do this? Or how do you do that? And, but stupid is knowing you don't know and not caring enough to go learn. And
Right.
I've got a cure for ignorance, and that's what I do. Talking to people, doing interviews like this, doing public speaking, writing articles, just helping lead my community. But the cure for stupid will land me in jail. So
Yeah,
I don't do
right,
that.
right. I love that differentiation. So ignorance is just means that you don't know, but stupid means like you know, but you don't care enough to know.
Yeah, yeah, or you don't. Yeah, you don't know. You just don't know, and I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah. Hmm.
And that's so disrespectful to
Yeah.
mankind, right?
Hmm.
Everybody. I mean, I want to know you, man. I want to know about you. I don't. Nobody's gonna. Oh, who's this guy, Lino? I don't care.
Yeah, right.
You know.
So tell us more about what you learned through that, through the why was
So
this
growing, like I said,
important?
growing up in Miami, you grow up and you first. I was born to Cuban parents. My parents are blue collar, as most immigrants are when they come to this country. Even if you were an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor in your own country of origin, when you come here, unfortunately, you have to start from the bottom up. And as a Cuban kid, I watched my father was a carpenter, my mom was a waitress, and they had this blind kid. And everybody was like, "Oh, and how's it, Cieguito? How's the blind?" There'd come a point where my mom would be like, "The blind kid has a name,"
Yes.
and it really you learn to help people understand. Oh, it's not amazing that I've done some. I've done some amazing stuff in my life, but not because I'm blind. I just believe that the creator's opened doors for me that I've, and given me the wisdom to walk through them.
That's
But when it comes to oh, how did you get dressed today? Well, my wife helped me, of course. Most guys do.
yeah, right.
Being blind has nothing to do with it. I mean, how many, a guy would never tell his wife, "You're going to wear that."
Right.
Not if you want to live. But hey, we do. They do. They tell us, you're gonna wear that? You're gonna wear flip flops to that? You
Right.
know. So it really comes down to helping people understand. And many of our cultures, they don't understand.
Right.
Um, Cuba, my parents, place of birth. There, when my parents were children, blind people used to basically collect pennies. Now, I don't agree with the Cuban government's political system. However, we got to give even the devil his due. And in Cuba, in the United States, and in many other developed countries, we have an 85% unemployment rate amongst the visually impaired.
Yeah,
85%.
that's
And we
so
gripe
high.
when the mainstream gets up to 6. But
Yeah.
85%, that means 15% of people that are capable of working in my community don't. I do. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
85% do, and I don't, and 15% do.
Hmm.
That's terrible. you
Oh yeah.
know, and why is that? It's because of ignorance.
Yeah.
In Cuba, what they did was when the regime took over in 1958, they created, or 59, they created a system that took from crib to death and created a system where children were educated all the way up through university. And in Cuba, there's very, very little unemployment. If you don't work in Cuba, it's because you don't want to. And I've always applauded that, because when I come here when I'm here in the United States and I'm walking like across the street,
Hmm.
I'll be standing there with cane in hand or dog in hand, and a person will run up, "Oh, let me help you," or grab me by the arm, "Let me
Yeah.
take you across." Wait a minute, I didn't just drop out of the sky.
Uh,
I got here without your
right.
help.
Yeah.
Why don't we walk up and say, "Sir, I see you have a dog," or visually impaired. Can I help you? Or and if there's 4 lanes of crazy traffic, it's like, hell yeah. I mean,
Right.
if you weren't here, I could risk it, but yeah, let me grab a wing, or let me just walk with you, or whatever.
Right.
In Cuba, on the other hand, you'll walk up to somebody and you'll say, "Hey, how do I get to so and so restaurant?" They'll be like, "Okay." So you walk down the street and you listen, and you see over there, you hear all that traffic over there. Okay, before you get to the traffic, make a left. And then with your cane, feel two doors. And then the third door down is the place you're looking for. Do you need me to go with you? No, I'm good. Okay, see you later. And that's amazing to me
That
because
is.
in this country, in the United States of America, I would submit that a majority of the disability of the unemployment rate amongst the disability community is due to ignorance. It's because, and I've proven that actually. I got into the technology industry in 1989. I opened up my first internet company in 2001.
Wow, it's amazing.
And thinking that, and I'm gonna drop out of high school, by the way, but we can get to that later. Um, I decided, wow, all this technology, man, it's the great equalizer. We're gonna just beat the crap out of this, this unemployment. Nope. In 2001, the unemployment rate was 85%, maybe 87. And we have come to a point now where I use AI every day, and AI is amazing.
It is.
Um, we've been able to do some really amazing things technologically, but there's no technology that's going to fix society, man. The only way that we can fix
Right.
society is just like this, is having open dialogue.
Yes,
And I would submit that political correctness has been such an enemy of open dialogue.
it really has.
Respectful communication and open dialogue about anything. You can ask me anything, bro. How do I put on my socks? How do I wipe my butt? I
Yeah.
don't care, because people want to know.
Yeah. Yeah, people do wanna know. And so, in you being open like this, which is, I feel it's incredible. I mean, thank you so much for being open because exactly this is what we need in order for people, for society to really see where the ignorance is so that they can see how able people are despite what they look like to you or despite what term they're being given from birth. People are able to do things their way because that's the way they have survived. That's what we have survived. This is how we've learned to feed ourselves. This is how we've learned to wake up every day. This is how we think and this is how we feel, which is quite different than your average person. And if people aren't seeing us and people aren't seeing you or other people like you or like us in a light of ableness, then there's going to continue to be the ignorance that still exists.
Well, part of that is it's a very positive reason, but also kind of an enemy. And I've learned to redefine my statements. I'm like, oh no, there's no room for empathy. Yeah, there is, but respectful empathy, which means, empathy doesn't mean, don't talk about it.
Right.
Or even to say, man, if I was blind, I couldn't do that. Well, yeah, I lift weights. And I guarantee you, if you've never lifted weights, then if you and I go into the gym, I'm going to lift weights a whole lot better than you are
Oh yeah, absolutely.
because you don't lift weights. But that doesn't mean with practice, you're not going to lift weights. And it's the same thing with being blind. Look, being blind sucks. It really does. But having one leg shorter than the other one sucks. Being overweight sucks.
Hmm.
Being bald may suck to some people. I find it very convenient.
Hmm.
Um,
Especially when your last name matches.
Yeah, there you go. But being blind sucks. And there's no doubt about that. And it is challenging sometimes. But it is certainly less challenging for me that at this ripe old age of 57, I've been doing it for a minute.
Yes, you have.
But but for somebody who just lost their sight, you
Mhm.
know, 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 5 years ago or 2 weeks ago, it
Yeah.
sucks.
Oh yeah.
And anybody to tell you, oh yeah, you need to look at Mike and how he lives his life. No, no, no. Mike is himself, and
Yes.
that person is themselves. And the best thing we could do is ask that person, what can I do for you?
Yes.
Not how can I help, because not everybody needs help, but what can I do for you? And if that just means sit here and listen to you, or you listen to me, or get you a glass of water, or walk you across the street, or whatever, that's cool. But don't just assume because it wouldn't be a certain way for you if you had my disability or blindness or whatever.
Right.
that it would be the same as it is for me because I've been doing this a long time. The one thing that I do find though is that people use the disability as an excuse for me. Oh,
Also,
well, you couldn't possibly do that. You're blind, or whatever. Or, if something doesn't work, well, what do you expect? He's blind, it's like, no, 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 no. I'm going to hold myself to a higher standard than that. And that's kind of one of the talks I do is basically called No Excuses. Society, people have given me every excuse to sit at home and do nothing. And it's
mhm,
cool, and it's not cool,
right.
because I've decided that I have a calling in my life. I have something to say. I have something to demonstrate to society, not something to prove, but something to demonstrate. If it resonates with you, hallelujah. If it doesn't, cool, move on.
Mhm,
I'm good. Not everybody's going to, if everybody likes you, you're a hypocrite,
mhm.
because some people aren't going to like you. And that's okay because that means that your opinions differ from theirs and they're not open enough to look at things your way.
I love how you said, Mike, that you have something to demonstrate and not prove. I love
Yes.
that. I love that.
Well,
Okay.
but so my question to people is, so what's your excuse? I mean, there are reasons, right?
Sure.
I mean, as much as I'd love to fly a plane,
Right.
nobody's going to call me up and say, "Hey, Mikey, Delta is hiring new airplane pilots, so you may want to go to pilot school."
Sure.
Well, I can't fly a plane. No, bro, you're just making an excuse. No, no.
Right.
There's some
Yeah.
very valid reasons
Right.
why I
Right.
couldn't fly a plane, you
Yeah.
know. But so those are reasons. So what is resonating in your heart? What's your dream? What is your heart telling you to do?
Mhm.
And why aren't you doing it? Is it an excuse? Is it a reason? Which one is it?
That's such an incredible, impactful question. What is your heart telling you to do? And why do you feel driven to ask people that question?
Because I've had to ask that of myself. Because when you're being told, um, I grew up, like I said, in a very Latino Cuban, environment. Ignorance didn't start at home. Ignorance started out there with well-meaning teachers in school that told me not to, don't push the envelope, just, I mean, chances are, you're going to have to work 3 times as hard as everybody else. Why? Because I'm blind? What the hell? Why?
Mhm.
You're ugly and you don't have to work 3 times as hard, or you're beautiful and you don't have to work 3 times as hard. Why should I? And these very well-meaning people didn't support me, didn't really set the bar very high. you know if you have a 12-year-old kid that tells you, or an 11-year-old kid tells you he wants to be a fireman, he wants to be the chief of police, and he wants to be a superhero, you don't tell him you can't do that. You tell him, yeah, you can. Of course you can. If your mind can conceive it, then given the right time and resources, your body can achieve it.
What were your dreams when you were a kid?
I don't know. It was, at first it started, I grew up, in Miami, and started in the music industry when I was 12. I
Wow,
started DJing and started on radio.
that's awesome.
Started working at a skating rink, and it's funny because, being Latino yourself, you'll dig this. So my father says to me, I said, "Dad, I want to go get a job at the roller skating rink playing records." And he says, "Yeah, okay." And he says, "You're going to keep going to school?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm only 12, Dad." And he says to me, "Well," and I'm translating to English. He says, "Man that works, man that pays rent."
Okay.
And from when I was 13 years old, that old man took $50 a week from me, and I was making 60.
Holy, holy cow.
And you know what he said to me, Lino, when I told him, "Dad," I said, you're taking most of my money." He said, "I'm not taking it." He said, "You're paying to live here. You're paying for the roof over your head. And
Mhm.
you need to learn that roof, even if it takes the last penny out of your pocket, that roof is worth it." And he says, "And if you want more, then work harder." And that was man, it used to piss me off. you
Yeah,
know
that would piss anybody off. Absolutely.
but it
But what
taught
did
me
you
to be
take from it?
it taught me to be a man, though. It taught me to be a father. It taught me to be responsible. It taught me that, you know what, no matter what, whether it's a mortgage or rent, it's due on the first, man, and it better be there.
Yeah.
you know and that started, I mean, I grew up, I started DJing, and at the skating rink I met some other people who wanted me to go DJ at nightclubs, and I was like, I can't get into nightclubs. And there was this thing called the Performers Act. The Performers Act,
Hmm.
and it would allow, I tell people it was like a sideshow. They watch the blind kids spin records, you know and I would get into all these adult clubs, man, and I was DJing. I started DJing in 1980.
Wow.
And of course, unfortunately, as you start running in those circles, you get exposed to many things.
Oh yeah.
And
Party
Miami in the
clubbing stuff.
80s was
Yeah.
nuts, dude.
Can imagine.
It was if you've ever seen Miami Vice, the
Yeah, I
program
remember
Miami
that show. I
Vice.
definitely absolutely remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like that. It actually was probably a little crazier than that, a lot
Wow.
crazier than that. So, I mean, I grew up around drugs. I grew up around guns and gangs and all that stuff. And let me tell you, I never saw my parents do one drug. I was raised in what used to be, just a middle class home. We always had a car in the driveway that was a couple of years old, maybe 2 years old, 3 years old. My mom and dad, we always had a roof. There was always food on the table. My mother and father never took drugs or drank. Yet I was out running with craziness. you
Yeah.
know, um, and kept growing in the music industry, and opened up a recording studio when I was 18. School never was for me. It didn't resonate with me. First of all, the teachers didn't know what the hell to do with this blind kid because I was what they called mainstreamed, which means I was involved with the regular kids, with the non-disabled kids, or
Mhm.
at that time, the normal kids.
Sure.
Which I've always wondered, because I always said you need to be normal. I'm like, what the hell is normal? Show me a
Yeah.
normal person, please.
Yeah. It is normal, right?
Will the first real normal person please stand up?
Yeah.
And you know, um, but so school just didn't resonate with me. And I had a sleeping disorder, which I discovered later. I always thought it was because I was working overnights at the club, because I would go to school at 7:30 in the morning, and then I'd come home by 2:30, get a couple of hours sleep, and then wake up at 9, go to the club, work until 5
Holy.
or
That's
4,
wild.
and then go to school, dude.
Oh
And it
my
was it was
goodness.
it was insane. It was
That is insane.
it was insane. So I would fall asleep in school. I found out later it was because I have a sleeping disorder, where my body doesn't make melatonin because I can't see light. But even then, it was still, I'm sure there was major sleep deprivation. And there were things in those days to keep me awake, in abundance in Miami.
Right.
Um,
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
so don't do any of that stuff anymore. But yeah, it was crazy. Met my first wife, and we had our, when I was 20, 19. And then 21 came around, and she was in a family way. And I said, well, then let's get married. And don't suggest marriage for 21-year-olds. Not
Right.
good. No bueno. Not because marriage isn't a wonderful thing, but we don't understand it. And I was very immature, and did some stupid things, and unfortunately it ended up in a divorce, about 7 years later, 6 years later. And I found myself in a place where I had hurt the person I loved the most, had two beautiful kids that were going to grow up with a part-time dad, because she couldn't deal with the pain that I caused her, which was understandable.
Sure.
And at that point, I was sitting at I'd started going to church. When the going gets tough, the tough go to church. And it was a little home church, and I was sitting at a table, and I just had an experience, man. I had an experience with something, and
You
it
mean like
spoke
some
to
kind of
me.
enlightening experience?
It was, I tell people it was my Damascus Road experience. It was truly like that. I was sitting there and the room disappeared. And I was in the presence of this thing, this presence. I tell people in today's politically correct way, and days of pronouns, I don't call God he anymore. It's they.
Sure. Well, it's probably the best way
Yeah, it is.
to describe
But
higher source energy. So
yep.
what this presence that you were speaking of, and when you say that you're finally in a room with what I'm imagining, what I'm feeling as you're telling me this story is that you're in a room and you can feel that there is something higher than yourself.
Yes. And it was like, look what you've done with the talents I've given you. I gave you the power. I gave you the words to lead people, and look what you've done. And this, and it's just like how you see your whole life flash in front of you.
Yeah.
And I mean, dude, I was bad, and I liked it. Everything from selling nickels and dime bags to selling blow to doing all kinds of crazy stuff when I was a kid. Stood
Mhm.
in front of and behind more guns than I could talk about and didn't give a shit, didn't care. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
You know, and it said, and look how many times I've called you. And then it flashed me through, and all of these little times where, a Bible story and a this and a that, and said, I've got a plan for you, a good plan. Accept my plan today. If you don't, I'll never bother you again.
Wow.
It's gone.
And
I
what
got
once
up,
that
bro.
once that voice was gone, did you also felt the energy around you change, shift?
Yeah, no, it was back. I literally was sitting at a dinner table, and everything disappeared. And then I was back at the dinner table. I remember I got up, and I used to carry like a little man bag,
Mm-hmm.
like with my weed in there and my my
Yeah.
my, my gun and all this stuff at church. And I walked over to Danny and I handed it to him. I handed him like my bag and all of that. I'm like, here, bro, you take this. He's like, what is this? I'm like, I'm done. I said, I think I just met this Jesus guy that you've been talking about. And I got to change my life, man. And from that day forward, I'm certainly not telling you I've been the exemplary Christian, unquote, quote unquote, spiritual leader or all of that. But there is a point in my life where I can honestly say that changed my life. And as much as I don't agree with the political leanings of the church today, there is something out there.
Absolutely.
And that something wants you to listen,
Yes.
wants us to listen and
Yes.
to love one another and to support one another and to encourage one another and to just be at one, in one mind with each other. It's heartbreaking when I see all the division that's going on today over ridiculousness,
Mm-hmm.
over what we call each other, over who we love and who loves us.
Right.
you know um how we identify. Listen, man, if you want to identify as a kangaroo, if I love you and did that, bro, all right, Mr. Kangaroo, that's cool. I mean, and I'm not making fun of people with different identities. I'm certainly not.
I don't feel that.
And I hope anyone listening to the podcast doesn't either. This is a come as you are party, man. you
Absolutely.
know
I feel this from you. I definitely feel come as you are, and it's really incredible. I have a question though. Prior to sitting in that room with whether you call Jesus or God or a higher source, did you feel the way that you are feeling right now about life, or was that a pivotal moment where even the way you were thinking and the way you were experiencing life altogether just took a complete change, a complete turn?
I was angry, bro. I was angry. I was so pissed off. I was just so pissed off. First of all, because of I, you know, when you grow up on the streets and you grow up in certain groups of people, you do what you got to do. You know what I'm saying? I got to do what I got to do, bro. I got to live. I got to survive. I got to put food on the table. I got to, put money in my pocket, and I don't give a damn what I do because I don't give a damn about me.
Mm-hmm.
you know and when that transition happened, if there's one thing that I've really never thought about it much until recently,
Hmm.
that is that I learned to love. I got the seeds of love to understand that, man, I love people. People
Hmm.
piss me off, but hey, so does my wife, so do my kids. I'm sure I do the same to them. So do my parents, because the people you love piss you off and
Sure.
you piss them off, but you
Yeah.
love them
Yeah.
where they're at, not where
Yes.
you want them to be,
Right.
and that's kind of, it's been a journey. I've done a lot of public speaking in my community in the last few years. I've gone more into corporate stuff, not because I'm this big gazillionaire. I've started small companies, you
Hmm.
know, um, and but we've made a lot of impact. But if there's one thing I've learned to do is to keep it real. I tell people, and the clean version is own your stuff and don't be a dork.
Yeah. Right.
And there's there's a rated R version which I won't say here,
Why
but
not?
well,
You can say it.
it's own your shit and don't be a dick.
Yeah, I love it. I like
You
that one
know,
better.
that is my life motto, bro. That is truly my life motto. And I truly believe that if we own our stuff, if we're candid about who we are and the mistakes we've made, I heard a guy say once, he said, we wouldn't be so busy looking at everybody else's sin if we wrote our worst sin on a t-shirt. We'd be so busy covering up our own, we wouldn't have time to look at anybody else's.
Sure.
And I've just decided to wear my t-shirt, man. I'm a sinner saved by grace. And that's not just a biblical term. I know who I am with no guardrails. I'm
Yeah.
worse than Chat GPT with no guardrails, man.
Right, right.
And I mean, and it's funny because we're talk in the news today, we talk about guardrails. Oh my God, did you see what Chat GPT did? Did you see what Gemini said? Hey, have you seen what you said lately?
Hmm.
You want the GPT or the guardrails on it, but what about you? What about the way you're thinking? What about the way you're talking?
Hmm.
So guardrails are important, and that's where society needs to, kind of be a little bit more open, a little bit more understanding, and a little bit more accepting to, I may, do it, but I do it a little different. One day when I was my second marriage, I got remarried. I learned to be respectful in marriage. I learned a lot of things about marriage, and got married again. And I told her, I said, hey, I know it sucks that I've been married before, but I come trained. I'm well
Yeah.
trained. I wash dishes. I cook on the barbecue. I even take out the garbage. So one day, we lived in a condo, and I had to take the garbage out. And so I'm a bit ritualistic in the things I do, So I would, go and get my cane and put it by the door, and then walk to the garbage can and take out the garbage and put the garbage bag down and put in the new bag, and then take the bag and go out, grab my cane, walk out the door, walk down the street, turn left, go down to the trash bins, the dumpster, and throw the garbage in there and walk back.
Uh-huh.
And my wife, she got to the point of like, hey, let me do that. I do it faster. I'm like, no, baby, it's okay. It really is. I don't mind doing that.
Yeah.
No, but I do it faster. It's okay. I see, what you go through. And it's like, babe, it's okay. I'm not going through anything.
Right.
Again, she was, if I was blind, blah, blah, blah. You know. Um, so so inevitably what it became was this race to see who would get to the garbage first. Because I love you, no, but I love you, no, but I love you. So after a while, I just stopped picking up the garbage, bro. I just like, all right. So what do you think happens, Lino? First argument. This
Yeah,
one was,
right.
you don't pick up the damn garbage. I'm like, wait
Yeah.
a minute, wait. You made this monster. You said you do it faster. You do it better.
Uh-huh.
So you do you, man.
Right.
And that's the problem. Sometimes it takes a person with a disability a little bit longer, but that doesn't mean that we don't get her done. Hey,
That's
I got 5 kids, man.
right. I know.
And you have no idea how many times the moms of my kids have been stopped to say, how do you guys procreate? you
Sure.
know, or whatever. And then, so, does your husband put his face down there and look? you know? So, I mean, it's like that. It's like that. And that's what I'm here to do, man. I'm here to talk to people about us, about humanity, and how we deal with each other, and how to deal with a blind employee, how to deal with a disabled person. Do you lower the bar for them? Hell no.
Mhm.
No. Ask them, what can you do? What do you find challenging? What can't you do? I can't
Sure.
fly a plane. I mean, I'm sure if I was the only guy available on the plane that the tower could talk me through,
Sure.
but under normal circumstances, I can't fly a plane. I can't.
Right.
But I can do a lot of other things, and I can do them, but just a little different.
Right, exactly. That's such an incredible, impactful question. So what can you do and what can't you do? That's excellent.
To me, there are very few things that I can't do. I'm a firm believer that if the mind can conceive it, given enough time and resources, the body can achieve it. And
Yes.
sometimes, I love the Bible, not only because it's a great book, but there's great wisdom in the Bible, and there's great examples of very strong people and visionaries in the Bible. And I do a talk, and I did a talk once called "Lack of Sight Doesn't Mean Lack of Vision."
That is so true.
And I look back at Abraham in the Bible, and God told Abraham, "You're going to be the father of many nations."
Mhm.
And at first, when Abraham, and he was in the 90s, at that time, and he told his wife, and his wife was also in her 90s, like, yeah, right, I'm an old
Right.
lady. And she laughed. Yet Abraham was the father of what we call modern day Israel, and never lived to see all those tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a visionary. What a
Yeah.
God-given vision. Can you
Yeah.
imagine if he hadn't acted upon that? Well, come here, baby. I know it takes a
Mhm.
little while to get working, but pour the wine and put on the quiet music, and we're gonna make ourselves a nation. you
Yeah,
know?
right?
So I mean, what is that dream, man? What is that thing you're birthing inside of you? What is that vision that everybody's told you is impossible?
Yes.
And you know better. And you know what? You know what failure is, bro? Failure is not trying. Failure isn't trying and not working.
Right.
Failure is not getting up off your ass and doing it and trying at least. And money, it doesn't always take money. It just takes belief. And I call it playing chicken with my circumstances.
Right.
And sometimes the circumstances run you over, but most of the time, if you wait and you start focusing on the solution and not the problem. I mean, when a team member of mine comes to me and says, "Hey, Mike, I've got a problem I want to talk to you about." It's like, "Okay, tell me." Well, this and this and this and this and this and this and this. Well, what do you want to do about it? Well, I don't know. Well, then you're just complaining, bro. Go back to your desk and figure it out. And when you've got at least a half-ass answer, come back.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that you thought about it. You're not just complaining,
Right. I love
and,
that.
and
Yeah,
maybe
focus
that,
on the solution and not the problem.
yeah, focus on that solution because you will find it. And especially if you tune in, if you quiet down, we have so many things distracting us and so many things trying to pull us in 15 different directions, so many screens and so much multimedia and everything else. It's so hard to just sit in a room and be quiet.
Mike, how do you quiet down?
I just sit. I sit and, or I'll put on some worship or whatever and just kind of chill, not necessarily in prayer. Prayer, I always tell people the first prayer is for God, the rest of them are for you,
Mm-hmm.
because we're sitting there trying to convince ourselves. And if we are truly trying to get in touch with a higher version of ourselves, with a greater force than ourselves, the universal consciousness, whatever you want to call it,
Sure.
and there are so many names, and I don't know, bro. It's beyond my pay grade. I don't know.
Right.
But I know what I believe, but if you don't believe that, that's cool. I'm not going to try and convince you what I believe. I'm just going to tell you how much I believe in it. Maybe my excitement about my belief will convince you maybe look at it. If not,
Absolutely.
well, sorry, you
Right.
know. But I got to tell you, it's just get quiet and just, you know, focus on thankfulness. Some of the one of the things that I've learned is to be thankful. Sit down every day and just say, what am I thankful for today? Well, I'm thankful for my children, thankful
Yeah.
for my wife, I'm thankful for the life I have, I'm thankful for my health, I'm thankful that, I look good for my age,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, you do. You look incredible.
Thanks. But just being mindful and thankful. Um, that attitude of gratitude. I love my life, man. Are there areas of my life that could be better? Hell to the yeah, but I wouldn't trade my life for anybody's.
Hmm.
It's my life, man. It's my life to live. And you know what? It's also my life to lose. And that's so powerful because are you
Wow.
living your life or are you losing it, man?
Hmm.
And losing it doesn't mean, you know, that you're not going anywhere. Losing it means that you just don't care about going anywhere. Everybody has rough times. We all get into a funk, you know. I being blind, believe it or not, there's a time in every blind person's life, and I don't know about other disabilities because I haven't been there and done that.
Sure.
But being blind, like I said before, it sucks. And there's a moment for all of us. And it may be a moment, it may be a week, it may be a day. I don't know how long it lasted me, but it lasted me a minute where you realize, oh shit, man, I'm blind. And I'm going to be this way for the rest of my freaking life.
Hmm.
You know, um, so you get used to it, and you start to learn, okay, well, this, there are people who have greater you told me all about the stuff you've been through. I'm like, whoa, dude, my stuff is a walk in the park compared to that. And that's not, I mean, some people are like, they it's almost like there's disability porn, right? Like, oh, look at that person, how effed up they are.
Yeah.
Thank God I'm not like that. That's not what I mean. I'm like, dude, you've been through some serious challenges
Hmm.
and overcome them. And look at the platform you've got.
Thank you.
What a blessing. What an amazing turnaround.
Thank you, Mike.
And to
You're a
me,
blessing.
it's the same thing, bro. It's the same. You really realize that, man, life could be easier, but life could also be so much harder.
Hmm.
And be thankful for the life you have. Be thankful for the children and or the wife or the husband or the parents that you have, or for the mentors that you have. I didn't have mentors that were leading me in the right direction. I only met them later. I only met a couple of people that really believed in me when I was growing up. And my parents, God bless them, they didn't know what to do with me, so they let me run wild,
Hmm.
you know. And even to this day, I ask my mom,
Hmm.
do you know what I do? Yeah, you work with computers or something. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I do.
Yeah.
You know. So, but I mean, but have a vision, man. Have a course for your life, but be open to, don't be dogmatic about it. Being dogmatic means hard-headed. So dogmas, when you accept a dogma, it means you're being hard-headed. Listen, we all need a plan, but be flexible enough to let that the boundaries, the ways of that plan move. There's a Jewish idiom that says, man plans and God laughs.
Hmm.
And that is so true. I mean, you asked me what did I want to do? I bet you're not doing what you wanted to do when you were a little kid.
Right. That's true.
So man plans, God laughs, and God says, no, I got a plan for you. you know and by the way, you know what else he said? There's another one that has a plan for you. And that's the key, right? Every day we can wake up and we can say, is this going to be a good day or is this going to be a bad day?
Hmm.
You have that choice.
Oh, yeah.
When that person cuts you off in traffic, when that person says that thing that's inappropriate, when that person looks at you the wrong way, or whatever. You have a choice. You can either just move on and just let it roll off, shake it off, as Taylor Swift says, or you can move on, or you can get pissed off and let it ruin your day. And if it does, guess what? Go to bed, close your eyes. Tomorrow's a new day. And every day, it's funny because I talk to people that are older than me. And as I get 57, growing up in Miami, a lot of my friends, unfortunately, are either dead, in jail, or like have really crappy health, healthy health conditions because of so much partying and stuff when we were kids.
Mhm.
So death has become real to me in the last few years as I've lost very good friends. And I started, and then as I talked to my dad, who's in his 80s, and my mom, it's like, man, I said to my dad, wow, how do you feel every day? He said, Mikey, I'm on borrowed time, man. I said, I wake up every day. I'm surprised to be here.
Mhm.
And I thought about that, and I'm like, why aren't more of us like that? Like, oh, I woke up today. Wow, God, thanks for another day. Or at least
Yeah.
thanks for getting me up this morning.
Right.
And really making the best of that day that's possible.
Absolutely. I love it. You're so inspirational. I'm feeling motivated. You even brought me to tears earlier.
Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry,
really,
man.
really enjoyed talking to you. I have a question though. You said earlier, um, a few minutes ago that you realized or you know who you are. Who are you, Mike?
I so I'm a traveler, dude. I'm traveling. I'm learning. I'm growing every day.
Yes.
Um, I don't know where the journey's going to take me after here. Some people say heaven. Some people say hell. Some people say the ground. I do know one thing though. It can't be for nothing. You
I agree.
know, I
I
want
100% agree.
I want to change this world to be a better place because I was in it. You
Mhm.
know, that's a little narcissistic. I get that.
I don't think so.
Oh, maybe. Listen, you know what? You know who was a true narcissist and had every reason to be? Steve Jobs.
Okay.
Steve Jobs could truly look in the mirror every day and say, the world would be different if I hadn't been born, because it would have been. You wouldn't have an iPhone.
Right?
So I I believe that God has given me the ability to be transparent, to be real, to when I mess it up, to say, you know what, I messed it up. And unfortunately, I'm a human. And chances are, before I leave this earth, I'm going to mess it up a few more times. So bear with me, give me some grace. And I promise I'm going to do my darndest to give it back. And that's who I am, but I've come to that realization. Without that, listen, bro, I can sell you some good dope, and I can write you a good and I could write you a great dance track.
That's awesome.
You
I
know what
mean,
I'm saying?
about the dance track, that is.
Yeah. Hey, I still do it today, man. I do remixes and all that stuff just because I love it.
Oh,
I
I'd
love
love
it.
to hear your stuff.
So yeah, man. I mean that's who I be. Just a kid from Miami, bro. A guy from Miami that you know, a loud Cuban, bro, that just wants to change the world.
Well, I think it's beautiful, and you absolutely are, because your energy counts, you count, you matter, and I'm just feeling really blessed by your energy. So thank you, Mike. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really feeling it. I love it.
I'm feeling it too. I absolutely love it. So I have a question. I mean, I can imagine that you've had quite an array of blind people in your life, people that just lost their vision. What kind of advice can you give these people that are struggling, that they're just like, "Hey man, I just lost my vision and I'll never get it back." What kind of words can you give these people?
So I grew up being able to see a little bit. Right. I had detached retinas. My doctors and my parents had the foresight enough to understand that I was going to ultimately lose it. So I was raised as a blind person.
Hmm.
Right. I learned how to use a stick and all that, but I could still see a little bit till I was 18. So when the lights went out, literally, it didn't bother me as much. There was, of course, that blind crash that I tell you about, but I think that happens to everybody, even if you're totally blind. At least the people I've talked to say, yeah, you're right. So the first thing is to acknowledge, hey man, that sucks. You
Mm-hmm.
lost your sight, that sucks. But it's a hell of an inconvenience.
Sure.
But but it's you can live a full life, and the best way to do that is to get around other blind people, get into community. You mentioned the deaf community, and that's the one of the communities I most admire. And in the blind community, we're working on it. We're trying to get that culture. If I meet a person from wherever, I've been to Africa, I've been to South America, I've been to Cuba, I've been to Europe, and let me tell you, all blind people have trouble finding stuff.
Sure.
We all have trouble matching colors.
Right.
We all have trouble. So there are things that we all have in common, even if we speak different languages. So to me, a commonality means culture.
Oh, I love this. It's beautiful. A
You know,
commonality means culture. Yes.
yeah. And if we have a commonality, then hey, let me help you. I mean, just because you walked in the room now, let me introduce you to some people. Let me give you some inspiration. Not the biblical kind, but just some inspiration. You can do this.
Hmm.
What are the choice you have?
Right.
I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to go take your life? Why are you going to do that? Life is such a valuable gift.
Hmm.
Why would you throw it away?
Yes.
And if you are thinking about that, get help, because
Yes.
I promise that you won't feel that way forever. But if you just keep that inside, if you keep the anger inside, anger is a short-term motivator. I know because I lived it. It's like that huge fire, when you light something. And then after a while, it starts, going down and going down and going down and going down. And it eventually peters out. And that's when people give up.
Right.
Don't do that. Feed that fire. Feed the fire with wisdom. Feed the fire with knowledge, with understanding, with empathy, with communication, with language. God gave us the ability to speak to one another, to write poems, to invent stories, to create analogies for a purpose. And that was to support one another in this thing called life,
Yes.
and to make the world a better place. It's a hard world we live in. It's not an easy world. But I promise that no matter what the cards you've been dealt, I've met people, man, that can't move their arms, can't move their legs, but they're PhDs. I mean, look at Stephen Hawking, you know,
Oh, yeah.
amazing human being.
Absolutely incredible.
You know, how many times didn't the world give him an excuse to say, I can't?
Hmm.
And he refused. And that's me, bro. I refuse. I refuse. I tell people when I hire somebody, there's only one thing that will get you fired here, and that is if you tell me I can't. If you can't, pack your shit and get out of here.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how. I don't know how I could do that. I need to learn. I need to take a class. What do you think? All of that is cool, but I can't. You ain't got no room for you, man.
Hmm.
Don't say I can't, because you can. If you can dream it, you can do it.
Absolutely. 100%, Mike.
Yeah. Cue
You,
the crowd.
yeah, right? I mean, for real, I absolutely feel you right there. If you can dream it, because why else would you dream it? Why else would you have that vision if it's not for yours to pursue, if it's not for
Well,
you, yours to come true?
wouldn't that be? I mean, we talk about a higher creation, call it God, call it. We call about a. Wouldn't it be a horrible, cosmic freaking joke? Wouldn't it be horrible if we had a creator that gave us the ability to dream and not to do? What a slap in the face that would be, dude.
Right? I actually never thought of it that way, but that's true.
What what a
What would be
who
what
would
would be
want
the
to
point
follow a
in that
God
case?
like that?
Right?
Oh, I could never do that.
Yeah.
Yep, I could dream it, but yeah, no, I never.
Right.
How many times didn't people in the before before our modern day technology look up at the stars and say, one day One day a man's going to walk on that round thing up there, the moon over there. You see that? You see Mars over there? We're going to put a rover up there. You know, how many people back there? You can't do that. And
Mhm.
somebody said, yeah, I can. If I can dream it, I can do
Right.
it.
Oh yeah.
And
I
that's
can definitely
exactly
do it.
how I believe, man. It really is.
Me too. I absolutely feel the same way. If I can dream it, I can do it. I will. So I just really love your philosophy in life and your drive and your passion. It's been really, really beautiful, and definitely you're pushing me to follow my dream, to continue to follow my biggest dreams. Like I just, no connection is a coincidence. So I'm just really taking it all in and feeling really blessed here. I mean, thanks again. I know I keep thanking you, but hey, I wanted to let you know I wrote a poem, and you mentioned poetry earlier, and I wrote a poem dedicated to our episode, so I'm gonna go ahead and read it.
Okay.
All right, here it goes. For my feelings and my warm embrace are rhythms of a chord of music harmonic that resonates with my truest calling. I use my love to see and use my heart to speak. In this conversation with others, the sun warms my skin, feeds my impurities as the moon makes her way into the night to shower my soul. And so my day is complete. And that's it.
Wow, man, that's heavy. When did you
Yeah,
write
man.
that?
I wrote that last night. I was really feeling into your history and reading your biography and just,
It's freaking prophetic, dude. That's crazy. I love
oh,
it.
thank you. I appreciate
I
it.
love that.
Thank you, Mike. I mean, thank you for inspiring me to write this. Really appreciate it.
I'll tell you, if you have a vision, you said you have dreams,
I do.
um, in the Bible, again, there's a book called Habakkuk, and Habakkuk was a prophet. I don't know whether major prophet or a minor prophet. I don't know what the differences are. And I
I
went to
don't either.
Bible
I
school,
wouldn't either.
but he said something so important. He said, "Write the vision, write it on tablets of stone." In other words, write it,
Sure.
for it will surely come to pass. Give it to a herald to proclaim it. In other words, speak about your vision, talk it into existence. When you open the book of Genesis, right? A number of times it said, and God said, and it was, and God said, and it was. Who was he talking to? Who were they talking to? They were
Right.
talking to their creation. They were speaking to their circumstances. They were speaking to what they had in front of them and what they wanted that to become.
Yes.
Life and death is in the power of the tongue, and those who indulge in it will eat the fruits of it. You
Hmm.
know, that's in the book of Proverbs. And that means that what you say is what it's going to be. If you say, I got a shitty life and nobody loves me and my wife thinks I'm bad and my children are a failure, you know what? You're going to have exactly what it is, what you said it is. But if you say, my wife is blessed, my children are beautiful, my children are the best gift that God's given me, my dreams, my goals, my aspirations are a gift
They
from
are.
my creator for me to share with the world.
Yeah.
Then you know what? It's going to be that, man. It's going to be that. You can
Hmm.
bet your bottom dollar on it.
Absolutely love it, Mike. Thank you so much for being here on A Little Less Fear podcast. How can our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners get a hold of you if they need to?
You are welcome to visit mikecalvo.com and write to me at mike@mikecalvo.com. And hope, to speak to you, communicate with you, and maybe, even talk to a group for you.
That'd be excellent. Thank you so much, everybody. Mike Calvo here on A Little Less Fear podcast. Looking forward to staying connected with you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and looking forward to the next episode. Sending you all love and light and happiness. Follow your dreams, as Mike said. If you dream it, it's yours. Keep going. If it's in your mind and if it's in your passions, it's gonna come true and it's meant for you. So follow your heart, open your heart, and always keep it open. Love you so much and have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to A Little Less Fear podcast. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends and your family about A Little Less Fear podcast. And if you are interested in being on my show, feel free to leave me an email at a little less fear at gmail.com. Or if you have any questions or comments and you also want to leave me an additional message, you can also do so from my website, leaving an inquiry at www.alittlelessfear.com. You can get a copy of my book on Amazon, Amazon Kindle, and Amazon Kindle Unlimited, also titled A Little Less Fear. And thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate all the support. Leave me a review if you get a chance. I love to receive feedback, questions, and comments. And any way that I can be of support to you, please let me know. Thank you so much. I love you. Wishing you love, light, happiness, and many blessings your way.